So we got started writing some prompts, and you learned that context, as always, when dealing with these AI models, is important. What's also really important to keep in mind here is that you're still interacting with ChatGPT. It just has this extra DALL-E 3 capability, but your prompt is in the end still processed by ChatGPT, you could say, and then sent to that DALL-E 3 model or translated to some instructions that are understood by that DALL-E 3 model. Therefore, what you learned in the prompt engineering section also still applies to this section and can still be useful for this section. For example, in a new chat here, I could send that same prompt but also edit it a bit and use this ask before answer prompting technique, which I cover in the prompt engineering section. So here I added this sentence where I tell ChatGPT to ask any questions it has before it starts generating the images, so that we hopefully get the best images possible. And indeed here, in my case, it comes back to me and asks me some questions which I'd argue indeed make sense to get exactly the image I want ChatGPT to generate. So therefore here I went ahead and wrote down some answers to the follow-up questions I got here, specifying the time of day, any special features of the duck, in this case that it should wear a red coat, any other details, in my case here that there should be an owl sitting on the Eiffel Tower, and which style I want. And here I'll stick to oil painting, though as you see here, you can really ask ChatGPT with DALL-E 3 to generate any kind of image using any kind of art style. And we'll get back to that later in this section as well. So here I'll send this prompt to ChatGPT and we'll see what we get. So here we go, and as you see, these images now got way more colorful, mostly because of that red coat. We also got the owl, though it's not really sitting on the Eiffel Tower, but instead on the duck. And that's also something which is not too uncommon. Let's take a closer look at that. So in the last lecture, we had a little conversation with ChatGPT, and we got some new images here, which look great, but which don't 100% meet my requirements, because I was asking for an owl to be included in the images that should be sitting on the Eiffel Tower. But in all 4 images, it's sitting on the duck or flying around. So ChatGPT did not really generate the images I wanted. And that can absolutely happen. Because whilst the results tend to be really good, they do sometimes come with problems like this. Now you can, of course, use techniques about which you already learned earlier in the course, and, for example, ask ChatGPT if it thinks that these images, these results are in line with my prompt. Here I also then gave ChatGPT an extra hint that it's mostly the owl which is problematic for me. Now indeed, here in my case, it then understood that the problem is that the owl is not be sitting on the Eiffel Tower, where it should be sitting, and it asked me if it should attempt to basically edit those images to place the owl where it should be placed. So here I'll say yes, so that it goes ahead and generates new images. And indeed, here, that looks better to me. The owl is still in the wrong place here, and it's a bit big here and here, but at least it's on the Eiffel Tower. But here I'd say that looks pretty great. The owl is on the Eiffel Tower here. The only problem there is that now the duck is not the prominent figure on the picture. Instead, this seems to be a human accompanied by a duck. But of course, we have a chat, so we can go back and forth with ChatGPT and also refer to specific images when trying to refine them. Here we could, for example, say, I like the bottom left image, the third one, but there seems to be a human in the red code. It should be a duck instead. Give me variations of that image that do use a duck in a red code. Now, as you can tell, I got a couple of images, which generally are related to that third image, though, to be honest, they could be related to any of the above images, and the owl was again moved away from the Eiffel Tower. Here we also seem to have a human again. And that indeed is a limitation or a problem ChatGPT with DALL-E 3 seems to have at the moment. If you have longer conversations and you're trying to refer to images, that works to some extent, but it also tends to lose context or produce only partially correct results. Nonetheless, using follow-up messages and refining images throughout the entire chat can also work. I had both kinds of results, and therefore in the end it of course simply comes down to trying what works for you. And what I found is that it can sometimes be problematic if you include too many details into your prompt, especially if there are too many details about too many different subjects in the image. It might be fine to give ChatGPT a lot of details regarding the duck and the art style of the image, but as soon as I also add an owl to that image and I give ChatGPT some details about the placement of that owl, there seem to be too many subjects in the image with too many details, and at least in my experience, that can lead to worse results. As you can tell here, we got totally different styles here, and therefore my recommendation right now is to typically focus on one or two main subjects or topics of an image and share a lot of information about those to ChatGPT, but to not include too many different subjects or topics into your prompt. So that was a lot of time spent with that duck, but it is of course important to understand how you can generally use ChatGPT with that DALL-E 3 feature and which limitations you might face there. In this lecture, I want to emphasize that you can not just control what's on the image, but also how the image should look like. As you saw before, you could tell ChatGPT to create a watercolor painting or an oil painting. Here, I'm trying to create a photorealistic image and that's new, I'm giving ChatGPT some instructions regarding the angle, that here I want a wide angle image and a 16:10 aspect ratio. And you can specify details like this as well. So don't just focus on what should be on the image or the general art style, but instead also take the format or the angle into account. Really, your imagination is the limit here, so be creative and try different prompts and different instructions for ChatGPT to get the images you want. As you see here, this prompt gives me some wide angle images here, which I could now use for any purpose I want. Now, besides using ChatGPT and DALL-E 3 for creating images or oil paintings, you can also use it to create logos or icons or flat vector illustrations, as I'm doing it here with this prompt, where I want to get ChatGPT to generate an illustration of a group of students learning to code, and where I'm also giving ChatGPT some instructions regarding the colors it should use, so that I'm getting an illustration I could use in a presentation or on a website or wherever I need it. In addition, you can also add extra information. Here, for example, I want to make sure that my illustration is in front of some white background, which then, for example, would make it a bit easier for me to remove that background in an image editing program like Photoshop, so that I can easily embed it somewhere where I need a transparent background. So things like this are also possible if needed.